I'm the analyst, one of the football analysts for 100 Yards of Football, Sports Talk Radio Facebook page, and right now, if you're seeing this, we're streaming live. So please comment on what I'm talking about right now. And right now, we're talking about the Georgia versus Georgia Tech game coming up this Saturday, November 24th. University of Georgia is 10-1. They've clinched the East Division of the SEC, and they're going to be playing Alabama on the 1st of December. But first, they're going to have to take care of business against Georgia Tech. That's right, the Rambling Wreck of Georgia Tech on Techwood Street in Atlanta is where they're from, but they're going to be playing this game in Athens at Sanford Stadium. And Georgia Tech is 7-4, coming off a victory against the University of Virginia, which was in overtime, 30-27, and Virginia missed a field goal in overtime to give Georgia Tech that win. And they had a lot of breaks in that game. Georgia Tech could have lost that game, but they got a safety and a score on special teams and some other special teams play that kind of equaled things out. But Georgia Tech needs to find a defense somewhere. They allow 27.5 points a game, and they're 70th out of 130 teams in FBS football, which is Football Bowl subdivision. And they also allow 361 yards per game of offense against them. Their points for is 37, and they are 20th in offense and points per game. They've got two quarterbacks that are very talented. Taquan Marshall, number 16, has 4D completions, which is only about 4 per game. They don't pass a lot at Georgia Tech. He has a 46% completion rate, which is not very good either. And then you've got number 8, Tobias Oliver, 50% completion rate, but they don't pass much. He doesn't pass much either. I think he has maybe 6 completions on the year. Two top rushers are their quarterbacks, Marshall 858 yards and Oliver 808 yards. And their running back, number 24, Jordan Mason, has 637 yards and 6 yards per carry, 17 TDs. And of course, they've got Quay Marshall. No, all right, we're back. We got Quay Marshall. He's number 1. He's got 11 yards per carry, 354 yards rushing per game, 84 yards passing, and he's pretty amazing. I'm sorry, the 84 yards passing was how many yards passing per game that Georgia Tech has, and 354 yards of rushing per game. That's where the University of Georgia's got to stop. Georgia Tech, their triple option is their offense. Everybody knows about that. And they've also, University of Georgia's got to keep Georgia Tech under 200 yards rushing. I think they'll have the game well in hand. Then you have the University of Georgia. They're going to apologize for our internet is coming in and out. They have 40 points per game they score. They're number 15 in football subdivision, Football Bowl subdivision, and they allow 17 points per game. That's number 12 in FBS. Obviously, their offense is a little more balanced than Georgia Tech. I don't know, obviously, but you can't get any more unbalanced than Georgia Tech. We know that Georgia can pass the ball. They've got good wide receivers. 226 yards per game passing, 258 yards per game rushing is their average. Jake Fromm, number 11, their starting quarterback, 68% completion rate. He has 100 more pass completions than Taquan Marshall for Georgia Tech. Obviously, they don't pass much. Number 1, Justin Fields has 250 yards rushing and 7 yards per carry. And he's also a quarterback. He comes in as a little bit of change of pace. But also last week against UMass, which wasn't your most stellar competition, he ran for over 100 yards and passed for over 100 yards in release of Jake Fromm in that game. Of course, number 7, DeAndre Swift is very healthy right now, and he's just burning up. Making the highlight plays like you wouldn't believe in the rushing game. 7 yards per carry, 9 TDs, and of course, right behind him is number 13, and that's Elijah Holyfield, 6.6 yards per carry and 6 TDs. Wide receiver number 4, Mecole Hardman, and he's a human highlight film. 31 receptions, 5 TDs, but he's also very dangerous on special teams and returning kicks on punts and kickoffs. And number 8, Riley Ridley, is pretty amazing. Riley Ridley, his brother is Calvin Ridley, who plays for the Falcons, and Riley Ridley may someday exceed his brother, but right now he's got 32 receptions and 6 TDs. And on defense, Georgia is very stout. And talk about their depth chart this week against Georgia Tech. Number 32, Monte Rice, who's a very, very good player, is going to be out with an injury. And it looks like Natrez Patrick, number 6, and Juwan Taylor, both of them will come in and relieve or fill in for Rice, who's out with an injury. Really, as some of the other players on defense, I want to give kudos to Julian Rochester, number 5, on the defensive line, and number 13, Jonathan Ledbetter. Of course, number 15, DeAndre Walker, who's a linebacker. They have a very stout defense, and these guys are going to be tested by the triple option. And we saw how difficult the triple option can be to defend. Alabama, who shut out, imagine, they shut out LSU, and they shut out Mississippi State, but then little old Citadel came into Alabama last week running the triple option. They scored 10 points in the first half, and then 17 points they scored, overall, 7 points in the second half running the triple option. So Alabama, even the vaunted Alabama defense, has trouble defending the triple option, and that's really what Georgia's going to have to do. They're going to have to shut down the triple option. The quarterbacks are their primary runners, so they're going to have someone play the quarterback, spy the quarterback for Georgia Tech, and shut down those lanes. And the whole thing about the triple option is their cut blocking. And we saw that a lot. That Citadel does a cut block, which is kind of like they hit you low and from the side. They block you that way. And so it's really, you've got to watch that and defend against the cut block. Your defensive line has got to do that. The other thing with Georgia, their offensive line seems to be coming around and being healthy. They're a lot more healthy than they have been in the last couple of weeks. So hopefully they'll stay healthy this week. And of course, the Georgia offensive line does a great job in blocking and protecting the passer, Jake Fromm, and also opening up lanes for the running game. Just tremendous. So really, I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. But Georgia is going to beat Georgia Tech, and we hope so, because if Georgia stumbles against Georgia Tech, it's going to be hard for them to get into the playoffs. And then, of course, December 1, Georgia's going to play. They're going to play against Alabama on December 1. So if they come in with 2 losses, they have a hard time, even if they defeat Alabama, making the college football playoffs. So they got to take care of business against Georgia Tech. It's a rivalry that goes way back. There's a lot of hate. A lot of these players played against each other in high school. They know each other really well, and it's for bragging rights. This is for the championship of the state of Georgia. These 2 teams play, and it's bragging rights all year. And I remember 2 years ago how deflating it was in Kirby Smart's first year for Georgia to lose a very close game against Georgia Tech, and it was at Sanford Stadium. So really, Georgia has to defend Sanford Stadium against those boys from Techwood coming in. The engineers, the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech, coming into Sanford Stadium. I just think Georgia has the better personnel overall, but they can't take them too lightly. They're going to have to play very stout defense. So I think Georgia will win this game. I think they'll score. They're going to have to score a lot of points because Georgia Tech can score points. But I still think the final score will be Georgia 45, Georgia Tech 31. And thank you for watching our Facebook Live event today. We'll be back in a few minutes talking about the Ohio State-Michigan game coming up this week and what that would mean for the playoff picture and who I think is going to win. So stay tuned a little bit later for that broadcast. So thank you for watching, and we look forward to talking to you soon.